The Finger Lakes region in upstate New York attracts thousands of tourists every year. Comprising of 11 lakes, this region is home to over 100 wineries. Seneca Lake, perhaps the most well-known lake of the region, is the largest of the lakes by area and total water volume. It is second in length only behind neighboring Cayuga Lake. Positioned between Geneva, New York at the north and Watkins Glen at the south, the lake extends 38 miles in length and is slightly wider than 2 miles at its widest point. Mysteries have circulated around Seneca Lake for centuries. Are Cayuga and Seneca Lake somehow connected underground? What are the mysterious and so far unexplainable lake booms? Perhaps a more frightening and sinister mystery is that of the Seneca Lake Serpent. For centuries, cultures around the globe have reported monsters lurking in the depths of our oceans. Tales of legendary beasts capsizing ships and eating crew members have terrified sailors throughout history. Nessie, the famous Loch Ness monster in Scotland, has been documented since the year 545 AD. Even today, sighting reports are still documented, as with this apparent sonar image. And this satellite image, taken by Apple Maps, depicting there may be something monstrous living in Loch Ness. Here in the US, there have been sightings of similar creatures since even before colonial times, the first being in Cape Ann, Massachusetts in 1639. While New York State has its own famous legend surrounding Lake Champlain, it is also home to a lesser-known legend, the legend of the Seneca Lake Serpent. The Iroquois Indians who inhabited the Finger Lakes region told the legend of Onyare. According to the Iroquois, Onyare is a dragon-like horned water serpent lurking in the depths of the Great Lakes that capsize canoes and eat people. Its breath was often said to be poisonous. The Iroquois tried warning early settlers in the region, but they ignored the Iroquois, stating that it was simply, quote, superstitions of a primitive people. It wasn't until July 14th, 1900, that these stories would receive local and national attention. At approximately 7 p.m., a sidewheel steamboat named the Otetiani was traveling northbound on Seneca Lake.
It was here, in 1900, between Willard and Dresden, New York, that Captain Carlton Herendeen spotted what he believed to be an overturned boat.
Captain Herendeen, along with his pilot, Frederick Rose, examined the object that was approximately 400 yards ahead. Captain Herendeen described the object as being about 25 feet in length, with a very sharp bow and long, narrow stern. At this time, numerous passengers gathered around the pilot house to witness the scene.
There is this boat trip that's taking place on a hot July day, and there's this sighting of what apparently is going to be billed later as a sea monster. I suppose it might be easy to dismiss it as simply maybe some people had too much to drink and they were seeing things in less than the way they really were. But I think that some of the people that were on board the group and how the story has continued to be reported, and was reported widely in newspapers like you were just showing me a few minutes ago, a Utica newspaper article of the time and so on like that, that there's probably more substance than just simply drunken fantasy that's involved in it.
Several of the passengers that were on board that day were very notable. They included 2 public works commissioners, a police commissioner, the manager of the Geneva Telephone Company, and a professor of geology, George R. Elwood. When the Otetiani approached to within 100 yards of the object, the object disappeared. Preparations were made to lower a lifeboat in the water as Captain Herendeen was fearing the worst. The object then reappeared, but at this time it was clear that this was no overturned boat. The creature, as Captain Herendeen called it from this point on, raised its head above the water surface and showed off 2 rows of sharp, white teeth. Captain Herendeen then decided to ram the creature, either to injure it and take it alive, or kill it and bring it back to Geneva. After several passing attempts, the Otetiani's side wheel finally struck the Serpent's back, throwing everyone off their feet. The Serpent's spine was broken and was dead. Lifeboats were quickly lowered and ropes tied around the carcass. The other ends of the ropes were then used to haul in the carcass to the Otetiani. The weight on the ropes soon proved too much for the passengers to handle. They were forced to let go or be thrown overboard. The carcass then sank into the abyss of the lake. At the location where the carcass was lost, the depth of the lake is over 600 feet. It is well known at this location, drowning victims very seldom rise or get recovered.
Upon arriving in Geneva, passengers shared their stories with friends and family. Soon it received local and national attention. The most careful and perhaps trustworthy account of the Serpent came from geology professor George R. Elwood, who was in the lifeboats helping tie the ropes around the carcass.
Professor Elwood is quoted saying,
"It was about 25 feet long, with a long tail which tapered until about 5 feet of the end, when it broadened out and looked much like a whale. The creature weighed about 1,000 pounds. Its head was perhaps 4 foot long, was triangular in shape. Its mouth was very long and was armed with 2 rows of triangular white teeth as those of a shark, but in shape more of those like a sperm whale. Its body was covered with a horny substance that was brown in color and of a greenish tinge. The belly of the creature, which I saw after the ropes had slipped and the carcass was going down, was a cream white. Its eyes were round like those of a fish, and it did not wink."
Captain Carleton Herendeen never changed his account of what he saw that day in 1900. He continued to believe in what he encountered until his death in 1920.
For more than a century, people have wondered if this incident actually occurred or the Otetiani's crew and passengers simply made up the allegations.
We ventured into the Geneva Historical Society for some possible answers that may shed some light on this mystery.
I guess when I first learned about it, I just said, oh, it's another one of those great folklore stories and so on. But there is some solid evidence that, this incident actually took place. Some sources are going to use the year 1899. I think even more reliable sources, such as newspaper article accounts, would suggest that it's really 1900, but we're in that general time period.
In May 1899, the Seneca Lake Steam Navigation Company, which owned and operated the Otetiani, announced that the steamer had been overhauled and readied for the upcoming summer season. The engine has been thoroughly overhauled and the boat put in first-class condition. Then in July 1900, the company announced that the Otetiani did in fact hit something large. As the summer season came to a close, the Seneca Lake Steam Navigation Company announced that the Otetiani would be dry docked for the first time for a thorough overhaul and rebuild. This would be the second time in as many years the Otetiani had been damaged or partially destroyed. The exact reason for the rebuild was never fully detailed. Although the incident in 1900 was the first of its kind on Seneca Lake, one must travel 30 miles to the north of Geneva to Lake Ontario to hear what could be the start of it all.
In 1829, the newspaper The New York Spectator published an article depicting a serpent sighting. According to the article, 2 young boys, aged 12 and 14, saw what they described to be a giant water snake near St. Catharines, Canada.
The boys described it to be about 20 to 30 feet in length, with a head 10 to 15 inches in diameter. Upon shouting and trying to scare the beast turned and disappeared. The article goes on quoting the Welland Canal intelligencer, who told his account of the sighting as well as gave some insight. This, we believe, is not the first of its kind that has been seen on Lake Ontario, and from what we can learn, there could be no doubt of the existence of such monsters in our inland seas.
The article also gives reference to another incident that happened between the years of 1804 and 1809.
Some 20 to 25 years before the printing of the New York Spectator's article, between the St. Lawrence River and Oswego, New York, a large serpent chased the boat ashore. The boat's crew made several certifications on the subject, but the serpent had stayed out of the way ever since.
So how are the sightings on Lake Ontario connected with the 1900 incident on Seneca Lake? Between the years of 1804 and 1809, the first documented sightings of a serpent on Lake Ontario, the Erie Canal, was not yet completed.
We have the canal on the Seneca River connecting Seneca Lake at its northern end with Cayuga Lake near its northern end. That was completed before the Erie Canal was completed. I would say 1820, 1822, certainly this canal on the Seneca River is completed. In 1828, this canal on the Seneca River is connected to the Erie Canal.
Built as a major transportation line to move goods from the Midwest and Great Lakes region to New York City and the Atlantic, construction of the Erie Canal began in 1817 at Rome, New York. Originally spanning 363 miles east to west from the Hudson River to Lake Erie, the Erie Canal was completed in 1825 at a cost of $7 million. In 2014, this cost would equate to over $103 million.
There were originally 83 locks on that Erie Canal that was known as Clinton's Ditch. Almost immediately it was overloaded with boat traffic and boat demand for locking through. And by the 1830s, there was an effort made to enlarge the entire canal. In the 19th century, the main changes were deepening and widening the canal, and it was widened to 70 feet wide, minimum of 70 feet wide, and to a depth of approximately 7 to 8 feet, minimum of 7 feet in the center of the canal.
With the Erie Canal now completed, would it be possible for this alleged serpent to make its way into Seneca and Cayuga Lakes?
Residents here in the city of Ithaca, New York are all too familiar with sightings of an alleged serpent. One doesn't have to travel far around the city to hear the mysterious legends surrounding Cayuga Lake. Filled with terrifying stories about unknown snake-like creatures making their presence known, the legends here are eerily similar to those of Seneca Lake. The residents familiar with these legends have even given a name to the serpent in these waters: Old Greenie. An article published by the Ithaca Daily Journal on January 5, 1897, depicted the 69th annual sighting of Old Greenie. Dating the sightings back 69 years from the article's published date takes us to the year 1828. This is the year the entire Seneca-Cayuga Canal opened, connecting the Great Lakes and the Finger Lakes for the first time. Could this have been the same creature people sighted in Lake Ontario? Perhaps this was the creature Captain Herndeen would soon come to see.
Do you believe a large creature, approximately 10 to 30 feet long, such as the alleged serpent or a large fish, do you think that they could easily get through the old lock system?
It's hard to say. This is a really intelligent creature that's hoping to evade any discovery. Maybe it would be able to, but I'm thinking thinking that for the number of locks this animal would have to go through, I would think it would have been sighted at some point. Certainly it could fit in the lock, but I can't imagine something that size getting into a lock and not being discovered at some point.
Okay. And the locks today, do you think it would still be possible for that same creature to get through the locks?
Sure.
Okay.
Probably easier today than in those days. The locks are much deeper and larger. I don't think anybody's looking for sea serpents today. Maybe they were in those days.
After the Seneca Lake incident in 1900, sighting reports came fast and furious, but no one at the time believed any of these claims outside the incident with the Otetiani, which came with mixed opinions. The serpent story was forgotten for a brief period of a few years. It wasn't until another well-respected citizen from Elmira who claimed to have seen the creature that people once again took notice. Emil Schappel from Elmira, New York, noticed ripples in the water spreading out in all directions about 200 feet from the shore. The ripples seemed to come from out of nowhere and resembled those of a motorboat. After just a few passing moments, the lake serpent appeared from below the surface. Seneca's serpent, just like real ocean monster, was the headline published in the Syracuse Journal on December 19, 1913, depicting what Mr. Schappel saw that day. After observing the creature for some time, he described it to be about 25 feet in length and about 18 inches in diameter. While walking the lake on October 12, 1904, Albert Banker of Ovid heard an unusual sound coming from the lake. Upon investigating the noise, he saw what he described to be the serpent lift its head above the water. In a panic, he fled the scene. Since our investigation of the Seneca Lake serpent began, we have traced the location of the sightings from the beginning of the legend. The results are startling. With all the modern day technology we have in our arsenal, why has this elusive creature been so hard to find? Perhaps it never existed. Perhaps it was a misidentified fish we commonly find today. Or perhaps the answer may lie within the makeup of the lake. According to NAVSEA, the U.S. Navy's underwater warfare facility in Dresden, New York, the charted depth of Seneca Lake is 651 feet, but the mysterious contour of the lake's bottom have led some to believe that there are caves, tunnels, or underwater passages leading to nearby Cayuga Lake. Dan Ward of the Erie Canal Museum has also heard similar stories.
I've heard that, I've always heard Seneca Lake never gives up her dead. I've also heard that people have fallen out of boats and drowned in Seneca Lake and the body turns up in Cayuga Lake. I've often heard there are underground caves between the two lakes. What I can't figure out is why the two lakes don't come to some parity of level, if that's the case.
While these claims have never been proven, could this be the reason why known drowning victims in one lake have mysteriously shown up in the other? Even in the most extreme cold temperatures that turn lakes into frozen wastelands and waterfalls to glaciers, Seneca Lake very rarely freezes. The last time Seneca Lake is completely frozen over was in 1912. The reason for this is that the lake is fed by underwater springs and is isothermal. The deepest parts of the lake stay at or near 41 degrees Fahrenheit, while the surface, even in the hottest summers, only warms to about 68 to 75 degrees. The size of these lakes in the region allows them to retain some of the summer heat into the early fall season, allowing a slightly longer growing season. This macroclimate is the key to survival to over 100 wineries in the region. Could this warmer climate, shorter winters, and a lake that never freezes equate to the preferred habitat of the serpent? I asked Jim Mathers, a recreational scuba diver, if a diver could potentially dive to the bottom of Seneca Lake. Could we get answers for some of our mysterious questions from scuba diving?
We typically dive barges. We have 5 buoys on Seneca Lake. 4 of them are marking old barges. I guess you could say that's unusual because they're well over 100 years old. They're encased in zebra mussels, but this is stuff that the trade was using before. I mean, they had the railroads and stuff, but this is how they were getting their goods and families moved.
What is the maximum depth one can dive safely?
Well, for me, being a certified diver and deep dive, recreational diver is 130 foot. To go beyond that, you'd have to get deep water certification, possibly tech diver training if you're going to go well beyond that.
Since recreational divers can only dive 130 feet, and the lake is much deeper, could there be anything in Seneca that has eluded capture? Today in Loch Ness and Lake Champlain, some believe the alleged creatures living there could be ancient marine reptiles thought to have gone extinct 66 million years ago. Based on the description of the serpent Professor Elwood gave, triangular-shaped head, teeth like a shark's, cream-white underbelly and a whale-like tail, could the creature be a mosasaur? A globidens would seemingly fit most of those descriptions given, and its fossil remains have been found in North America. The issue with this reptile theory is that these creatures would have the surface to breathe air, and therefore seemingly would be spotted much more frequently, especially in the summer months. Perhaps it accidentally found its way into Seneca Lake and made its way back out the Erie Canal to the Atlantic. It wouldn't be the first time such ocean-dwelling creatures found themselves in Seneca Lake. A dusky smoothhound shark was captured in Seneca Lake in 1962. While finding sharks in Seneca Lake is rare, bull sharks have the capability to survive in fresh water for their entire life and have been found over 600 miles from saltwater. The Greenland shark of the cold Arctic waters have also been sighted and documented in the St. Lawrence River. The ancient marine reptile theory seems to be a long shot, so we looked into something more plausible. Something that may fit the description of what Professor Elwood gave, and something very much alive today. Lake sturgeon. To get information on lake sturgeon, we talked to a lake sturgeon expert. We traveled to Cornell University's biological field station on Oneida Lake to talk to Tom Brooking, a research support specialist and sturgeon biologist.
The sturgeon used to be so abundant that fishermen would throw them up on shore to get them out of the way so they didn't tear their nets up. They used to stack them like cordwood on shore. They would catch these in the Hudson River, and they would put a rope around it and tie it to the dock and take it to New York City. They used to call them Albany beef. So those were sturgeon taken to New York City for sale in restaurants. This fish used to be so abundant, and they've been around 300 million years, and in a period of about 70 years, we managed to totally decimate their populations.
Around the time of the Otetiani incident, sturgeon were so common that market prices plummeted to around 38 cents per pound.
In New York State, lake sturgeon and all species of sturgeon are threatened species. That means they're protected. You cannot harvest them. If you do catch one by accident, you have to let it go immediately. They are recovering, though, through the stocking programs from New York State DEC. And right now they seem to be doing very well. There's about 8 or 9 populations in New York that are actually doing very well. We hope within the next decade or so that there might even be a move to remove them from the endangered species or threatened species list. So they seem to be doing well. This species of sturgeon, the lake sturgeon, will reach about 300 pounds full grown, and they can live approximately 150 years. There are species of sturgeon on the west coast of the United States called the white sturgeon. Those fish get upwards of 2,000 pounds and about 12 to 18 feet long. But our fish here will max out about 300 pounds and about 8 to 9 feet.
While some descriptions of the serpent made by Professor Elwood match with those of lake sturgeon, one cannot ignore the differences. The serpent is said to have 2 rows of sharp white teeth, while sturgeon have no teeth. Other glaring differences are the broadened out whale tail that sturgeon lack and the very long 4-foot head. Similar, though, are the facts that the heads are triangular, the bodies being covered in a, quote, horny substance, the cream-white color of the undersides of the creatures, and the fish-like eyes. Sturgeon, though not as large as the serpent was reported to be at 25 feet long and 1,000 pounds, could the size be over-calculated or over-exaggerated?
So, I would say it is possible that these could be mistaken for a sea monster or some other larger creature. If 4 of these surfaced behind each other, it's entirely possible that it could look like one big sea monster 50 feet long. So I think it's possible these are the creatures that a lot of people think are sea monsters. Most people think of sturgeon as a deep water, mysterious creature. They're actually doing very well in Oneida Lake right here, which is a maximum of about 40 feet deep in 90% of the lake. So they don't necessarily need to have deep water. They actually do very well in shallow water. They can survive in large deep water lakes like Lake Ontario, Seneca Lake, Cayuga Lake. So they do okay in those deep waters, but they're not necessarily a deep water mythical creature. In my estimation, in the late 1800s, early 1900s is when we start to see reports of sturgeon in the Finger Lakes. And some of the very old newspaper reports, they seem to appear in the late 1800s and early 1900s. That's probably a result of the canal system being opened at that time, and that connects the waterways so that fish could move between waterways. So at that time, probably there were sturgeon in Lake Ontario, possibly in some of the Finger Lakes, and they could have gone through the canals to get in there. In the Finger Lakes region, Cayuga Lake has the most sturgeon, and that's mainly as a result of the New York State DEC stocking program. They're becoming more abundant based on the stocking program. The other Finger Lakes, we get sporadic reports, even since the 1800s, reports of people catching sturgeon. They're seldom verifiable. We very seldom have found any sturgeon in research nets that are set by DEC, and they do quite a bit of netting in Seneca Lake. So if there's a lot of sturgeon in Seneca Lake, we should see those, and we don't. Like I say, we do get miscellaneous reports. What these could be is fish coming up the Seneca-Cayuga Canal and in through the outlet of the lake. It's possible they enter the lake occasionally through the dams and canals. So it is possible that there are some stray sturgeon in Seneca Lake, yes.
While New York State's Department of Environmental Conservation declined an interview, they did, however, respond to our questions via email. According to New York DEC, sturgeon have never been found within Seneca Lake.
And certainly the Oswego River, you can then come down what is the Erie Canal and down the Cayuga-Seneca Canal and certainly get to Seneca Lake that way. Clearly.
Reports starting around the 18 and 1900s are probably the result of fish coming up through the canal system. And that probably coincides about the time that Seneca Lake monster started to be reported.
I would say that any animal that could navigate all of this must have incredible intelligence and an awful lot of willpower to get somewhere.
Do you think, in your own opinion, that there could be other organisms we don't know about lurking in the depths of Seneca Lake?
I'm a hands-on person, but absolutely. Look what we're finding, that we've only explored not even 5% of the ocean, and look what we're discovering. Look what we're discovering on land, and you know, we're 2014 for crying, going on 2015 for crying out loud. There's still stuff out there that we have no clue what's out there.
So people are left to wonder, what exactly did the Otetiani's crew and passengers see that day in 1900? What was the large object that the steamboat hit? Was it a prehistoric marine reptile that is thought to be extinct but somehow survived and used the canalways to enter the Finger Lakes? Was it perhaps a record-sized lake sturgeon? We may never know what lives in the depths of this mysterious lake. Perhaps the next time you visit the Finger Lakes region, you too will come face to face with a legend centuries in the making. Seneca Lake is one of the deepest. For centuries, before European settlers arrived in this region.
Upon arriving in Geneva, how you're gonna think it would be that far?
Record, you.
So,
This bridge sucks, it's moving.
you still got 50 foot of cord. Now.
I got him in the shot.
Here in 1900 that Captain Carlton.
Okay, yeah, I'm Dan Ward. Am I talking at him or at you?
Talk to the camera.
I'm talking to you. Okay, good.
Good, I'm Dan Orr.
Right here?
Cool.
Okay. With the Erie Canal now completed, would it be possible for the alleged serpent to make its way into Kegus? Right here?
Yep, it's recording.
Okay. It's good to go?
Yep. No.
Seneca Lake, there was documented that there was an alleged serpent sighting on this lake.
Yeah. I'll have you look at it quick. Oh!
There's a very good chance that there is something in Seneca Lake that we have no clue on.
Awesome. That's it. You're all done. See, that wasn't so bad.